Fox News is what's driving the whole thing? Fox News, the White House is saying Fox News is not a news organization, they're an opinion organization. They're saying, no, we actually have news people who do news. But then they get their opinion people out, like Sean Hannity, telling a lie, and it's a lie, about Kevin Jennings of the Department of Education, saying that he knew about statutory rape and failed to report it. At the time it was known that this was a lie. And yet Bill Hemmer reported it on America's Newsroom, Brett Baer reported it, Megyn Kelly reported it. When Rush Limbaugh said that Sotomayor's comment sounds to a lot of people like reverse racism, that exact same phrase was used by Megyn Kelly on the air as a news story. America's Newsroom on Fox was having all these Tea Party folks on and heavily covered the 20, 30, 40,000 people who showed up for the Tea Party in Washington, D.C. A couple weeks later, 75,000 people showed up to protest for gay rights. Not one camera crew from Fox News showed up. And in fact, during the Tea Party one, we actually have footage of Fox producers yelling to people, "Hey, shout louder, get more fired up." And what's even more distressing is the evidence of confusion. Only 16. This was a study that was done by Pew, and they asked, "Do you know that there is clear evidence that Saddam Hussein was working closely with Al Qaeda? Yes or no?" 67% of Fox News viewers say yes. 16% which is wrong. 16% of NPR viewers say no, which is the correct answer to that question. Study of University of Maryland study is just an amazing study here about misperceptions on three important questions: whether or not Iraq and Al Qaeda had a strong link, whether weapons of mass destruction were found in Iraq, and whether the world public opinion favored the U.S. attacking Iraq. All three of those are the answer is no, right? Fox News, 80% thought all three of the answers were yes. NPR, PBS, only 23% of people who get most of their news from NPR, PBS thought all three answers were yes. And CNN, it was kind of in the middle. It was around 55%, which is a sad commentary on things. In any case, I wanted to bring in Mark Finkelstein on this issue. He's a columnist for newsbusters.org. He hosts a Right Angle, an award-winning local political talk show in Ithaca, New York. Writes a food and wine stories for the Ithaca Times. Newsbusters.org. You can find his writings. Mark, we met in Ithaca. Nice to have you back on the show, Mark.
Nice to be with you again, Tom. And when I heard you saying, could the United States be turning into another Venezuela media-wise, I said, wow, Tom is really onto something. Yes, a powerful administration trying to crack down on unpopular news outlets. And then, of course, you went just the other way with it.
Yeah, well, I did, and this concerns me tremendously. By the way, do I hear a bird in the background?
Yeah.
Are you controlled by a pigeon there, Mark?
And no, they're actually parrots, and of course, in a way, that's kind of symbolic because it sounds as if the Obama administration really only wants its line to be parroted, and if somebody takes a different line, then they try to stifle the bird.
Yeah, I'm not going to use that cheap shot on you. I just thought maybe it was a pigeon, and the robotic pigeons are. You got to look out for them. They're in charge of the world. But in any case,
good sound effect.
Are you suggesting that Fox News should be considered a news organization?
The great thing about America is that everybody gets to make their own decisions. Obviously, Fox News has millions of people who do look to it for both news and opinion, and we get to make that choice. The White House doesn't, although obviously they're trying to influence the conversation. If they want to criticize Fox, so be it. But I think they are getting close to crossing a line when David Axelrod goes on George Stephanopoulos' show this past Sunday and tells other media outlets that they should not deal with Fox. I think, again, I would look to Ruth Marcus's column in yesterday's Washington Post. Ruth Marcus, I saw her on TV yesterday saying she voted for Obama. She's an Obama supporter, but she entitled her column Obama's Dumb War with Fox News. And she says it makes the White House look childish and petty and Nixonian. And then she asked the very obvious question. Imagine the outcry if the Bush administration had pulled a similar hissy fit with MSNBC. Again, those are Ruth Marcus'
I think George Herbert Walker Bush did that the day before yesterday, although, point taken, there's not an equivalence. It's not like an administration. It's just a past president.
Where are you going? Do you want to have...
Where I'm going with this, I'll just lay it out for you, Mark, is that, A, Fox News is not providing news, that their so-called news anchors are spreading the smears and lies that are being put forward by their opinion people, who are entitled, opinion people are entitled to put forward smears and lies. In fact, people, I think, rather expect it, but they don't expect it from news people. And the so-called news people on Fox are promoting those things.
Actually, Fox is putting out news that the mainstream media don't want to cover. Two obvious examples were the Acorn story and the Van Jones story. That they were instrumental, that Fox was instrumental in covering.
Well, Van Jones is a great example.
Buried for as long as they could, and eventually even the Times and other outlets had to sort of come back and apologize and say, you know what, we were wrong not to cover it, and Fox was right. So, I think
no,
it's just
I don't think so. I don't think that they were wrong. Van Jones is a great example. Here you had Glenn Beck, who made an incredibly racist comment saying that the President of the United States hates white people, basically, has a deep-seated hatred for white people, when he was, his mother was white and he was raised by white people. I mean, it doesn't even make sense. But beyond that, it's a god-awful racist comment. And so Color of Change, a group that Van Jones helped found, got about 80 advertisers to pull their advertising from Glenn Beck's show. Glenn Beck's revenge was to go after Van Jones, started, just aggressively going after him.
Going after
this
him with
then
the
migrated
truth.
from Glenn Beck's
he
personal...
went after him with the truth about his records. I mean, and again, these were stories that were buried by the liberal media outlets, and eventually they had to report them, and a number of them said, you know what, we were wrong.
It was an irrelevant truth. Van Jones it was an irrelevant truth. Van Jones was not committing any kind of crime. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He was a very competent guy. He's a very smart guy. And frankly, I think that Obama, by tossing him over the bus, pushing him over the bus, I'm suspecting that that was the point at which the Obama administration said, okay, enough of this stuff already. Fox News, their opinion people like Glenn Beck go off on these jihads, and they're jihadis. These guys are like terrorists. They go off on these jihads against individuals, and then the news guys carry it on, and we're not going to play that game.
It's not whether you're doing something illegal, is whether your record puts you outside the mainstream. This is, I'm sure you've debated Van Jones a lot on this show, but the bottom line is he clearly wasn't outside the mainstream, and when that was exposed, the Obama administration realized he could no longer serve. But the bigger issue here is that story.
I don't think he was at all outside the mainstream.
In part by Fox News, whatever you're ascribing invidious motivations to Glenn Beck, but that's really beside the point. He got the story out.
Yeah,
so, but in any case, one of my questions for you, Thom, is what would you do about it? Are you going to are you volunteering to become the White House media czar, and you're going to determine which outlets are allowed to broadcast? Would you?
No, I'm not suggesting that there should be anything like that. What I'm saying is that anybody who comes along and says that they're doing news shouldn't necessarily be taken seriously. That, whether it's Limbaugh or Hannity or Beck or Bill Hemmer or any of the guys on Fox, I don't think that they're doing news.
Major Garrett, who I think has widely been acknowledged to be a serious reporter. And again, the same thing.
But Major Garrett is
ignoring the fact that
parroting.
If it were on the other side, you'd be screaming bloody murder if George Bush had said this about MSNBC. Just yesterday, for example, Mika Brzezinski on Morning Joe said that based on her 10 years of working at CBS, she knew of one Republican among all the hundreds of producers, anchors, and reporters.
That has nothing to do with what goes on the air.
The bias goes on both sides. This just happens to be
Mark, apropos of your point,
White House doesn't like.
Mark, we're talking with Mark Finkelstein in Ithaca, New York. Apropos of your point, Dana Perino, day before yesterday, admitted that the Bush White House, when Bush was president, was not, calling on MSNBC. I mean, she said we just didn't do it. So I think it was happening.
And you think that's fine?
I do. Yeah, I think that I don't want somebody in the White House being a media czar, Frank. Anyhow,
look, I mean, this is.
I guess we agree on that.
This whole fight
Mark
is
Finkelstein. Thanks for being with us,
Mark.
Hartmann program, and I want to tell you why I think that by calling out Fox News, that President Barack Obama is crazy like a fox, and I mean that as a compliment. I mean that in a positive way. He's actually using a strategy that was used by George Walker Bush to tremendous personal and political advantage. Here's how it works. In order for there to be a hero in fiction, whether it's Shakespeare or whether it's a dime store romance novel. In order for there to be a hero, there needs to be an anti-hero. There needs to be a bad guy. And the goodness of the good guy, or girl, as the case may be, but the goodness, or woman, as the case may be, but the goodness of the good guy is always defined not by the good guy. The goodness of the good guy is defined by how bad the bad guy is. This is one of the rules of screenwriting and novel writing that most people never think about. But if you notice the movies that you're seeing, notice the books that you've read, the novels that you've read, the stories that you know of, even our fairy tales, a good guy can only be as good as the bad guy allows him to be. In other words, defines him as. In other words, Superman would be incredibly boring. He'd be running around stopping bank robberies and preventing car crashes, and it would be an incredibly boring story if there wasn't Lex Luthor. Batman would be incredibly boring if it wasn't for the Riddler and the Juggler and the Penguin and the, whatever. So you have to have an anti-hero to have a hero. George W. Bush, created an anti-hero in Osama bin Laden. And I believe it's the reason why for 7 years he never bothered to catch Osama bin Laden. In fact, he even said, I don't care so much about Osama bin Laden. Why? Because he needed him out there. In fact, I believe that Osama bin Laden died in 2002 or 2003, in March of 2003, April of 2003, when they had the funeral for him. And we haven't heard from him since, for all practical purposes. David Ray Griffin wrote a great book about this. I believe it's true. But George Bush wanted to keep him alive because he needed a boogeyman. He needed an evil anti-hero so that he could be as powerful as the anti-hero. In other words, the power, the depth and level of evil of the anti-hero is the ceiling by which the good guy can be good. So President Obama needs an enemy. He needs an antithesis. He needs somebody he can take on. Now, if he overtly made the enemy, for example, the insurance industry, they've got enough money to squash him like a bug. If he overtly made the enemy American business or the American Chamber of Commerce, sadly, our political process has been so corrupted by money. Again, they got enough money to squash him like a bug. So, and if he picked a particular Republican politician, particularly, it would pretty much have to be a senator, but then he would be elevating them to the level of President of the United States. If he started taking on, for example, Thom Coburn, who has, one-man gesture, stopped the extension of unemployment benefits. If you're unemployed and your benefits are about to run out, call Thom Coburn's office, Senator Thom Coburn, because he's put a hold on the bill in the Senate, a bill that will otherwise pass as soon as he lets go of that hold. If he were to take on Thom Coburn, he would be elevating him to the level of the president. So that would be a political mistake. But by taking on Fox News is perceived as powerful. Fox News is all over the country. Fox News has millions of viewers. Fox News actually is a political operation. It's run by Roger Ailes, who was in the Nixon White House, who was in the Bush White House. Actually, maybe he wasn't in the Nixon White House, but he was in the Bush #1 White House. Bush #1, Poppy Sr., brought Roger Ailes in as a senior political advisor. Roger Ailes, the guy who runs Fox News, was to Bush what Turd Blossom was to George W. Bush. Well, Karl Rove was to George W. Bush. And so by creating this bad guy, Obama has accomplished two brilliant things. Number one, he's really made the Republican Party the bad guy. But he doesn't have to call out the party itself. So he doesn't elevate the status of Michael Steele. He's instead saying that Fox is the official organ of the Republican Party, the official arm of the Republican Party, which, by the way, is true and has been for, all of its, since it came into existence. Roger Ailes started Fox News with money from Rupert Murdoch. Keep in mind, Fox News lost $100 million a year for 5 years. I mean, I find this incredible. People say, oh, Air America failed because they lost $14 million. And, I have a long association. I'm still associated with Air America. They carry my show on their Washington, D.C. station. My name is on their website. I was the guy who replaced Al Franken on Air America, and for years, and still am on most radio stations. And People, the people on the right, they say, oh, Air America, they failed because they lost $14 million. Air America's biggest crime was undercapitalization. Fox News lost $100 million a year for 5 years before they made one penny. Before they made $1 on Sean Hannity, Fox News lost $500 million. Air America's biggest crime was that they were undercapitalized. But anyhow, my point is that if you had a Republican administration that said, Air America isn't a real news organization, they've got an attitude, they'd be right. And the Bush White House, when I was with Air America and George Bush was president of the United States, was not, they held a radio row inside the White House where they invited talk show hosts in. And here I was, the number one talk show host, and still am, the number one progressive talk show host in America, by any measure, number of stations, number of live clearances, number of listeners, by any measure. And they did not invite me to the White House. The Bush administration did not, because I was with Air America. So if the Obama administration wants to say, Fox News is the official, arm of the Republican Party, or they're promoting the Republican agenda, or even things that are more crackpot than the Republican agenda, they're right. And I think that this is a brilliant way for the president and the Democratic Party, but particularly for the president, to have an enemy so he can be a superhero, a legitimate enemy, and yet still be able to play in the world of politics without muddying that world. I think it's brilliant.